Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Len Lonzi. I am the Managing Director of the Preccelerator program offered by StubbsAlderton&Markiles. We are a full-service law firm located here in Los Angeles, and our Preccelerator program is down here by the beach on the promenade in Santa Monica. We have a number of companies that we're working with right now, and today we have a webinar that's going to be given by our good friend and my good friend, Brian MacMahon. Brian is at the Expert Dojo, also an accelerator program here in Santa Monica. He's got a little bit of a different focus and does some things a little differently, but he's a tried and true investor, and he has a number of years of experience in helping early stage companies get started, strategize their funding, and helps them get funded. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce my good friend, Brian MacMahon.
Thanks, buddy. And actually, while you were saying that, I was thinking, Christ, why don't we have Stubbs speaking at our accelerator in front of our people? We should have all of our folks finding out about the legal services that you guys do down there as well. So we're going to do that as soon as we finish this call. I'll do a little bit of an overview today. I'm not going to do PowerPoint or anything like that. I just can't. I would bore myself to death, never mind everybody else. So I want to keep the structure very flexible and very fluid. I'll give you a little bit about myself, a little bit about Expert Dojo, about where our focus is, and merely to create context and awareness rather than anything else. I will temper that with whenever we finish our accelerator programs, we get the entrepreneurs who come through the program, we make like a portrait of them, and the portrait is like this Andy Warhol type thing where they put their comments about life as an entrepreneur in there. And some people say, you know, live your dream, not somebody else's dream, and all these wonderful things. And one of the chaps from the last accelerator, Alex from Woodpecker, had met with so many investors and so many angels and so many mentors and so many people who know everything, that his conclusion at the end of everybody telling him opposite things was just nobody knows anything. So I want to start today by absolutely reinforcing that. All of us, no matter how many investments we've done, no matter how active we are in the startup space, every single piece of advice that we will give is based on our own biases. So I hope that you take some little nuggets out of this based on what you see other startups doing, and I hope some of it's useful to you. So I'll start from the end and quickly work my way backwards. We have now invested in 70 companies. They are all in the early stage space. The majority would be probably a little bit of traction. We actually invest in a lot of minorities, a lot of female founders, and a lot of folks who are either immigrants or they're from outside the States, and then we bring them into the States to get started. So as an example, in this current cohort, we have 12 companies. 3 of those companies are out of India. 3 of those companies are out of Africa. One of the companies is out of the British Virgin Islands, go figure. We've got another company that's out of Egypt, revolutionizing healthcare over there. And then I think we've got 2 companies in the US and 1 company from South Korea. So we have scouts all over the world, and then they look for companies, and we create a bridge into America for a lot of them, and then help those companies really scale. This year, we will invest in 50 companies, 50. And considering we are a very small team of about 6 or 7 people, investing in 50 companies is a huge feat, or at least it has been. We do them in 4 cohorts. We do a cohort of 8 weeks, then we take a break for 2 or 3 weeks, then we do another cohort of 8 weeks, then we take a little bit of a break, and then we do another cohort and another cohort. Based on my bias, it really irks me and pains me that there's such a focus on investment within the early stage entrepreneurship space. And a lot of the focus that we have within the accelerator is actually on trying to build great companies. So this week is our first week with the new cohort, and everything is about building your vision. I'm actually going to incorporate some of the things into this talk today so you can get a feel for it. But like, how do you create your big, hairy, audacious goal? And how do you future look back, i.e. look 5-10 years in the future and see where you can actually go to, and then like bring yourself back. And we'll be looking at things like, do you have an evolving company or an evolving product, or do you have something which is transformative? So are you just a better iron lung, or are you a polio vaccine? Because they're different directions, and the polio vaccine obviously got rid of the iron lungs as they were going forward. So we love early stage startup. We're based here on top of the mall. And then as you can work out, if we're going to do 50 investments this year, last year and the year before, which was kind of when we started, we did approximately 30, 40 investments there. So very aggressive. We are actually investing more now than before, and if it's physically possible, we will continue to invest more. I personally believe that times like COVID are the greatest times on the planet, as long as you are not desperately unlucky with the type of company you have. So for example, if you have a retail store, it's challenging. Not that you can't create the greatest new retail store of tomorrow, but it's definitely more challenging. Or if you have a bar, if you have a restaurant, if you have something that requires physicality. I look at our friends, Brent from Two Bit Circus downtown, which was just an incredible company 12 months ago. And today, obviously, faced with all kinds of problems because it's a physical location that people go to. A little bit further back in the background, I have had this place for about 5 years, built a team around us. We did not start as an accelerator, nor is my plan to actually be the greatest accelerator on the planet or anything as horrible as that. We started as a laboratory, as a place to study early stage entrepreneurs. And we brought entrepreneurs in here, we studied them, we watched them, we tried to learn from them. And we spent approximately a year watching companies go through what we saw were some really, I would say, injustices, because they were following a path of other entrepreneurs that didn't help them. And then also learning some really good things from that. And where we would like to go to in the future, if you want to look at what our big, hairy, audacious goal is, it is to enable billions of people all around the world to be able to start successful companies, no matter their gender, their color, their country, their religion, or any of that silly stuff, with equal opportunity. So now you get a feeling as to who I am and who Expert Dojo is, and where we come from. So what I'll do is this. I will spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes sharing with you what we learned from those 100 companies that we brought in right at the beginning of the accelerator at the start. And I'll share that with you because I believe it ties into, I know a lot of what we're going to talk today about is about finding investment, getting investment, making sure that you have a better, stronger, faster company that can break through. But what we learned from that year of studying people actually molded everything we did in the accelerator after that. I'll then throw it open for a little bit of conversation for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how active everybody is. And then I'll launch into a bunch of what I hope will be helpful information for you folks, as far as just, tips and tricks and help with being able to pitch and get your message in front of investors, whether it's me or whether it's, any of my colleagues or other folks out there who are at later stage. Okay. So let's look at the things we learned first. So what we did was we slowly, and Len and I have been friends for years and years, as of me and Eli, and we immediately brought in a few companies, and we said, look, you guys can work here, and you can work here for free, and we're not going to charge you, and we just really want to see what happens. And there was maybe 5 companies in the first few weeks, and then there's 10 and 15 and 20, and then over a period, 100 came through. And as we're scribing down and we're watching what those companies were doing, we noticed a few things. And this is about investment, I'll make the first, these are in no particular order, but I will make the first one about investment. We absolutely said to everybody coming in, we are going to provide you with no service whatsoever. We're not going to help you. You can't even get a cup of coffee here, nothing, but you do get a desk. And then we said to people, okay, any questions? And everybody, I don't mean 1 or 2 or 3, everybody said the same thing. Do you know any investors? everyone. And what it does is it creates that place, and it's not just a place of need, of neediness, but it also positions you as like the only thing that can help you be successful as a company is if you know investors. And even though I'm going to argue against myself in probably 15 or 20 minutes time when I talk about what the role of a CEO is, what really kind of upset me at the beginning was that America is this place of the greatest entrepreneurs on the planet where people can turn anything into a phenomenal business. And there's a focus on revenue and drive and getting all those things right. And if the first thing on your mind every single morning is getting investment, then how is it possible to build a great company? Now, the paradox of this, and what's really interesting, is that the kind of entrepreneurs that investors are looking for are the kinds of people who don't need investors in the first place. It's when you're fine, when they perceive that your company has eliminated as much risk as possible for the valuation that they're coming in at, that all of the investors will suddenly surround you. So for us, it was an issue that was the first thing that came out of their mouth. What would have been amazing to hear would have been, hey, I've come up with this concept. I've got this product. We're building it really well. It's going to have an incredible experience. These are all of the milestones that I intend to hit over the next X, Y, and Z period. And by the way, over that period, we will probably fundraise. And when we do, we will keep you updated so that when the time is right for you, when you feel that your FOMO and your greed override your lack of belief, you should give me a call and we'll be ready for you. But in the meantime, I don't give a damn if you're there or if you're not, because we're going to build a great business either way. Okay, so a needy, toxic relationship with investment is right there. Not good. Second thing, which is kind of equally disturbing, is lack of focus on brand. Again, America is the greatest place on the planet for storytelling. I mean, our brand is without comparison anywhere. Nobody can build brands like America, whether it's Coke, whether it's Patagonia, whether it's Tom's Shoes. Like, we build stories around brands that make people, even, Apple is a phenomenal example. I'm sitting here on a Mac Air, which I don't know, what is it, $1,400? But I'm just like a random okay tech guy who I would be perfectly happy on a Dell computer. But why am I on a Mac Air? I'm on it because they sold me the story. They sold me the ability to be something better. If I carry a Mac Air with me, it means that I'm successful. It means that other people who are Mac Air type people are going to align themselves with me. Is all of this a great story with a phenomenal brand, or is it a mixture of BS and manipulation for the consumer? It's a combination of both. But part of that is what makes a great story. And what we noticed was just there was a lot of people who were coming into the dojo with a really, really strong focus on minimum viable product. And they had, I don't want to blame Lean Startup for this necessarily, or Steve Blank, or say that Lean Startup is the cause for all of the shitty products that we have in America today. But I will say our manipulation of the understanding of what Lean Startup was supposed to be is definitely a problem. And I love beautiful, incredibly made product, which are done in the right way, and where that becomes the focus. And if we have to do it a little bit less because we don't have the money, the focus is still on building something beautiful. So we noticed that actually there were a lot of folks who were just trying to get something to the market and get it to the market very, very quickly. And the third area, which was a real area of concern, was on growing users. Now, I tell you these areas of concern because if you conversely can actually create and build a business that overcomes all of these, whereby you're on the other side of the fence, investors are going to really like it. Because what we do is we see strong, self-reliant entrepreneurs who are going to build something which is great and lasting, and also has got a real strong focus on acquiring users. So the acquiring users was the next part of it. Everybody's plan seemed to be, here's what we're going to do, Brian. We're going to raise a ton of money, and I'm hoping you know somebody who can do that for me. We're going to get something shitty out to the market as quick as we possibly can. And then we're going to take all of the $1 million that we raise and we're going to throw it into Facebook ads. But it's cool because we're going to throw 60% of it in Facebook ads, our Instagram ads, our TikTok ads, our Google ads. It's all the same thing. And this is a little bit like, reading the book, The 4-Hour Work Week, and suddenly, beginning to think that you can pay your mortgage, have the perfect family, and just work 4 hours a week and just life works like that. It doesn't work like that. You have to work really, really hard on sales outreach. If you're going to build a growth plan, your investors are going to want to see that your growth plan goes way beyond just doing the same thing that everybody else does. They're going to want to see what you're doing to build up your influence level. Look at Gary Vaynerchuk. You think Gary Vaynerchuk is reliant on his future being on Facebook ads? No, he built up a really strong domain expertise. But he came from nothing, a dude working in a wine shop for his dad. Like, he had nothing. But he worked on building up his social influence and his social domain. And that becomes really strong. He growth hacked. He uses platforms. He did all those types of things. Okay, so there was more things that came out, but I don't want to hit you with a gazillion things. I want to open it up and maybe unpack this a little bit. And I see we got a little bit of chat coming in the platform. Oh, thank you, sir. So let me open it up here. So throw some things out, and then I got some great stuff to layer in over the next 40 minutes or so. But just hit me with any questions you have, and I will try and just you reach out to as much experience as I have within the investors that I know, within what we invest in, and also within our startups too.
So mechanically, the way we'll do this is if you have something that you'd like to ask, please put it in chat. That way we can unmute you and you can ask your question.
Yeah, and if I don't see anything within 10 or 15 seconds, I'll just keep on talking.
So while people are thinking about what questions they want to ask you, Brian, let's talk about that. What we expect in an accelerator of an initial fundraise, and people coming in are saying we did a family and friends round or friends and family round. What does that actually mean? What does that do for the company? What does that do for prospective investors? And what is the effect of that? And why is it important?
So I'll give you a comparison of our two previous cohorts. The first cohort was just when COVID started, and then the second cohort only finished a week or so ago. The one when COVID started, we had a really bad record of raising money for people in the cohort. I think we got 2 companies that raised money, because what happened was all of the angels left the market. Like they literally left immediately, which is very normal when there's any type of downturn, because a lot of the angels are enthusiastic amateurs, and that means that they've made money elsewhere, but they have choices, right? They can invest in property, they can invest in the stock market, they can invest in alternative assets, or they can invest in startup. And startup actually, in a down market for angel investors, is a pretty shitty option, because they got to wait 10 years to get their money back. And what they continually want to do is try and flip their money 3, 4, 5 times over a 5-year period and maybe make a couple of 100% on the money. Like, this is the time when people get rich. But what also happened was the VCs just put things on hold, because they are the opposite. The venture capitalists are like us. Like, we do $100,000 checks into companies, and we know that the higher the valuations are, the better the quality. The higher the valuations are, the more companies which are lower quality feel they're higher quality, because everybody's investing. The more difficult it is for us to even break even. Well, when we get into a poor period and the angels leave the market and the VCs are a little bit confused, it's the greatest of all times. We bring in phenomenal companies, and those companies are generally at a later stage. So what just happened was there was just a switch in the market. And then fast forward 2 months, only 2 months to our latest cohort that finished in the last 2 months. We had one company, Envision X, raised $3 million. We had GeoJam, and I did one email out saying that they had raised 1.5 of their $1.7 million raise, or just under. And literally of me sending the email out, within 3 days, they closed out the last $200,000 of their round. We got Potley, who've got $700,000 raised. We've got Champions Round, who I think will commit. I mean, it's been a pain dealing with some of the other investors, but I think we'll commit up to about $900,000 or $1 million. And these investments are mainly coming from VCs, like folks like Antler VC, who have got really aggressive over the last while. Type 1 VC, small rounds, like Type 1 just did 200 grand into one of our companies, Munily. Antler are looking at 3 of our companies right now. Thai Angels act like a VC more than they do even an angel group, and they have got insanely aggressive. We have 3 companies sitting in front of them right now looking for deal flow. Tech Coast Angels getting more aggressive, and if you look, you'll see they've started to match funds with the angel groups that they've also got inside. So what I've seen is that organized angel groups, at least the better ones, and VCs have just suddenly said, hang on a second here. We can suddenly take companies where we've got traction, where we couldn't have got them before. We can get companies on a good valuation. We can pick and choose because the angels have left the market. This is the best of all times. We're going to invest, and we don't need to invest $1 million that we were going to invest before. Now we can just invest 250 or 500 or 600. We can spread our bets a little bit wider. So I'm going to say, for us raising money right now, this is a better market. And this also may be due to our maturity as well, but this is a better market than we've seen in an awful long time, because it's an honest market. Like, we can tell, and actually, let me add one extra point to it, because you've asked in one question, you've said, tell me all about investment forever. And there's so much to unpack inside this. But I will say that in a time like this, the VC's job is only one thing ever, by the way. The venture capitalist job is only one thing ever. Whether we're an accelerator, whether we're a late stage VC, whether we're early, our only job is to predict and get on top of trends quickly. That's all. We want to be able to hear a pitch, and we want to hear, you know what? They've been making iron lungs for such a terrible amount of time because polio has been so awfully bad. And based on my background and based on what I've learned, I believe that we can actually create a vaccine to polio. And here's all of the proof points that are going to make that happen. And by the way, when that happens, it will mean that all iron lungs everywhere in the world will disappear. Now, it just comes to a place of us as futurists, or us as readers of the tea leaves or the trends, being able to see things clearer. And there's nothing clearer than an ocean that's just been cleared out after a hurricane. And right now we're in that place. So I know, crikey, I should not be investing in something which is a physical space. It's just going to be really hard. I shouldn't be investing in anything, and we actually have investments in travel, but I shouldn't be investing in travel immediately until I understand how travel is going to pan out. And virtual reality has not taken over as quickly as we had hoped it would take over, but gaming has become really strong. Now, does that mean that virtual reality isn't going to become strong in the future? No, it probably will. But it means that our timing of being able to see where things are going to go has certainly become a lot better. And from the startup's perspective, the honesty of what you're creating and how quickly it's going to grow and scale is more on display to everybody outside.
Great. So a couple comments. Ellie made a comment that a friends and family round could be a double-edged sword. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, Ellie, so I'm going to make you back that up.
Well, anytime you take money from somebody, they feel like they're entitled to offer their their opinion and advice and exert some control. And you want to make sure that the people who are in that position are people whose advice you want to take. And so there's, just because somebody's a friend or a family doesn't mean you want them in your knickers when it comes to running your business. That's number one. Number two is, if you take money from somebody who's a close friend or a family member, and the investment goes south, you could be damaging an otherwise very valuable personal relationship to you. So while I don't discourage people from taking friends and family money, I encourage them to go through a fairly detailed, careful analysis as to should they and what the risks are, and which friends and which family they should be taking money from. And I think that pretty much says what I meant by double-edged sword.
Thank you, Ellie. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Brian.
and I'll add a comment onto that because I think he brings up a phenomenal point. You're dealing with enthusiastic amateurs at their most extreme. So these people in general don't know anything and they're trusting you entirely. So just be very careful. Just be really careful. I've always hesitated to take money from people. And look, when we opened the dojo at the start, we were not an accelerator. Now it's just myself and my partner. He's the financial partner. I'm the general partner. But back in the day, at the beginning, look, we took money from people who were maybe would not have been the most experienced angels in the world, but they semi knew what they were doing. Would I have taken money from my mom at the start of the dojo? No. I just wouldn't, because I wasn't sure, right? It comes to levels of being sure. So just as you go through the process, I think it's a very good point. You got to make sure. We have one of our startups right now that took money from an attorney, and the attorney's just a nightmare. He wants to be chairman of the board, and the guy doesn't know anything. He's nothing but an anchor and chain on top of this company. So set the expectations with the people coming on board. Be honest with yourself about what you expect to happen in it. And I also think as well, be consequential. So if things do go south and they go terrible, I personally believe if it's friends and family, then you should give them riding stakes in any company you have going forward. It's just the right thing to do. These guys are your friends. I got another couple of questions in here, Len, actually, which I'll throw them out if you like.
Yeah, go for it. I was going to read them to you, but you can go for it.
Wonderful. The first one I love because this is like the greatest surprise ever to me, what I'm about to say to you. So the question is, what does raising money remotely look like? Will investors invest in companies and more specifically teams when they can't meet them? If you'd have said to me 9 months ago that in Expert Dojo, we would not be able to host events. And those of you who haven't been here, we have a beautiful, it's like Stubbs, but outside. It's a beautiful, beautiful space. And we would have events every single, crikey, 5 days a week we had events, to the extent that I was sick of them. And if you said to me that I couldn't train our cohort face-to-face, and I couldn't have events here face-to-face, and I couldn't bring investors in here face-to-face, which were the things that we were most known for, I would have said to you, we're going to have to close down because I don't know how to run an accelerator like that. And I am now saying to you, 4 months in, I am more efficient as the head of an accelerator by 60, 70%. My cohort are raising investment at a better click than we have ever raised investment before, because now we got everybody. I got guys in New York. I got them in San Francisco. I have investors who are zooming in from Israel, from Australia, from the UK, from everywhere. The world has suddenly become ours. So as far as pitching to the investors, it's become way, way better. My cohort, they are bonding better online than they ever did in person, because it's not about making people feel good by being around them or going for a beer or walking outside and becoming friends. It's about pure, cold, hard, what value am I getting from this interaction right now? And if you just layer in a pepper of pay it forward, which we always do anyway, then we've just noticed that it's just gone through the roof. And events, if I have my way, I will never do an event again. I think they're the greatest waste of time on this planet, other than getting, some decent pizza and a few beers on the way home. But other than that, it's a waste of time. So yeah, look, you can reach out to everybody. There's no limit to the amount of folks that you can reach out to. And here's the other thing, is before, I used to travel for at least 3 months of the year. I don't travel anywhere now. I don't go anywhere. I'm at home all the time. Like, nobody can say, oh, I'm really sorry. I know you tried me, but I wasn't in. It's like, where are you? There's nowhere to go. You have to be in. So everybody's reachable. Everybody's at home. Most people are bored. Even if they're busy, they're still bored. Everybody's looking at their LinkedIn. So as long as you got LinkedIn Navigator, you got some decent outreach going on, and you have a good communicable message, then I believe this is the greatest of all times for under-sourced startups. Would love to hear about different examples of traction. So traction is the only bad thing that a startup has to worry about today, because what's happened is, in the same way that if you looked at a chart for, it's a really amazing fact actually about just venture capitalism in general, in 2010 or 2011, of all of the Series A rounds that were done, only, I think it was 11 or 12% had traction. It's a crazy statistic, only 11 or 12%. And the rounds were way smaller. So the rounds might have been 7, 8, 9, $10 million for a Series A. And that was the valuation. And then the round would have been like $2, $3 million. Today, 88% of all companies who are going for Series A have got traction. And normally that traction is expected to be at a minimum of $100,000 a month if it's a SaaS model, a monthly recurring revenue, and preferably even more than that for some companies. But what's happened is the valuation of the Series A has increased substantially above that. I think of traction, Len and I, we sit in a very, very, very different world, right? So if you look at the different types of VCs, we are accelerators. And what accelerators mean is that we'll come in at the very earliest stage, and Len's actually, they coined the term pre-accelerator, which is even braver than we are. But we come in at a very early stage, and then we just try and get those tea leaves and say, what are our chances of this company being able to do something which I internally, and actually, so when I'm doing due diligence internally, and I get my associates, John and Victoria, are actually looking at, should we do a deal or not? What we do is we have a model which is called island hopping. And island hopping means that you're at 10,000 a month in revenue, you're at 100,000 a month in revenue, you're at $1 million a month in revenue, you're at $10 million a month in revenue. And the last island, you're a unicorn, okay? In some worlds, even on the second last island, you're kind of a unicorn. And even if you're not a unicorn, who cares? Everybody's made money with you who's invested in the early stage space. So what we're trying to do is see, has the startup convinced us that a bridge can be built from the mainland to the first island, from the first island to the second island, second to the third, third to the fourth, right? And that belief that you're trying to give us normally has to be based on some kind of truth. So it's very hard for you just to say, Brian, if we just get 1% of the market, then we're totally good, dude. it's just not going to work anymore. I mean, it may have worked in 2011 when nobody cared about traction and all your Series A rounds were being done without any traction. But today, everything's moved forward. So it's really, really, really hard to be able to get investment outside your friends and family when you haven't built anything and you don't have any traction. And I can give you 3 examples from our last accelerator of companies that we did invest prior to traction, but they had stuff going for them, right? So it wasn't monetary traction and it wasn't user traction, but it was another traction. So one of them was GeoJam, that company I told you about that raised 1.65 million. They got Mariah Carey as their chief talent officer. Now, how much work is Mariah Carey going to do on it? I'm not sure, but they brought her as their chief talent officer. You like Mariah? Yeah, Mariah's also, she was the best-selling female singer-songwriter of all time, if I'm not wrong. But they brought her in because they knew nobody was going to pay. No investor was going to give $1.5 million for a music app, which is to connect fans with their artists without some traction. So their traction was Mariah Carey. Now, another team was Secure Block Tech. So we invested in Secure Block Tech, really risky investment for us because they were building the backbone of what they believe the blockchain internet is going to look like. But we bet on their team. They built up such an incredible team of people, and their team were slightly older that as we sat in diligence, we're like, if these guys don't do this, they're screwed. Like, they're all mid-40s, early 50s. They're brilliant people. They've accumulated an amazing team. Like, they don't have many more swings of the bat. Not for what they're building, because it's too deep enterprise tech to be able to do this every 2 to 3 years. So we thought, who's got more to lose, us or them? They do. Okay, that's a bet that we'll make on that. And then there was another company that did have traction, but they had the wrong model. So we knew we would have to rip it apart to be able to start all over again, which we did and they did, and they came forward. All of the other companies that came into the accelerator, the other 9 out of the 12, all had some form of traction. And what that allowed us to do is we could say, okay, you got, $5,000 a month in revenue. So based on that, how many people are you outreaching to? How many prospects? What's the lead time? What's your cost of customer acquisition? It's just a math equation. Well, before that happens, it's incredibly hard. So look, I hope that helps with traction a little bit, but you just gotta, folks have to believe. That's the business you're in as a startup. You gotta make the people who are going to be your stakeholders believe in what you're doing. And I said to you earlier on today, I'm going to argue with a point that I made earlier on about like investment not being important. As a startup, you only really have 3 jobs that you have to get sorted out. Your first job is to make sure that you don't die today, right? You have the money that's coming in. Now, whether that money comes in from revenue or whether that money comes in from a little bit of investment at the start, your first job is to make sure that you have the cash flow to get you through. And Amazon are the best example in the world of that because they lost $6 billion over the first 10 years. So we look at them today as a great company, but no, you had an entrepreneur who had a phenomenal capacity to make people believe in what he was building. And that meant that he could give himself a longer lifeline. Second job, and this is in no particular order, by the way, all 3 of these are really important. I think it's hard to make one work without the other ones. But the second job is to make sure that they're surrounded with the resources around them for their company to be successful. And that starts with team. You need rock stars. I've had startups in the past which have been horrible because I did not skill gap. I did not get incredible people to believe in my mission going forward. I now believe I have the greatest team on the planet not because we've evolved, not because we've invested in 60 or 70 companies, but because I am so much better at making sure that my vision, which is the third factor, that my vision is explained in such a concise way that I know that the people that I'm bringing on board would step in front of a train if they knew that it was coming towards me or Expert Dojo first, right? So there are your 3 jobs you have to do. But traction in one of those areas or all of those areas along with revenue is super important today. You got to make people believe. Minimum share percent that VCs still want in order to make an investment. It just depends. Like accelerators, I won't speak for Len, but accelerators will generally come in at an entirely different rate from everybody else. Most of the companies in our cohort are probably valued somewhere between $5 and $10 million. But we do 3.5% for 50K or 7% for 100K, very similar to a Y Combinator, very similar to a 500 Startups, very similar to a bunch of Techstars, like a bunch of the other folks out there who do the same thing. And what we say is, look, if you already have don't come to us for the money. The money's not worth a damn. There's money everywhere. That's not what you come for. Like, you come in because either, number one, you want a partner that's going to help you fundraise in the future because you're like, I suck at this and I want to become better. And I know that if I can go faster because this is the right partner. And again, you got to check out people and check out their records in your industry. But if it's the right partner, then they can just help me get there faster. And if I get there faster, and even if it's different things, like I'll give you a great example. We took one of our companies, 802 Secure, and we spent ages trying to close a round for this guy for like $3 or $4 million. And we just did a $6 million round, but that's not the good thing. Like that's okay. That happens. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut. The good thing is that we got $3 million of it through a term loan at 9% over a 5-year period with no repayments for the first 6 months. So what does that allow us to do? If you think about this, it speaks to the whole game of what we play. This is about getting yourself to a place where you will be acquired, you will go public, or you will be sold as quickly as possible with as little dilution as possible. There is no other game. That's the only game that you play. So if I look at 802 Secure and Gary today, valuation of $15 million, we could have got him $3 million. That would have taken up 20% of his equity. No, I don't want to do that. I want to take his revenue from 150 grand a month or 140, and I want to take it up to $350,000 a month because we internally are confident he can do that. The second he gets there, his valuation is $40 million. Now that same $3 million is only going to cost 8%. So we just saved 12% by getting the right type of smart investors that are coming in with no personal guarantees. And the only thing they do is if you don't pay it back, they take your software. I'm like, dude, if we don't pay it back, it means that we're fucked anyway, which means you can have our software and I'll give you the couch for free. Okay? So yeah, so just you want to make sure they give you value. I believe that our value is just how we are, and that we have not been proven out yet. So we'll end up where we end up. But I truly believe the biggest thing we do is we bring in beasts, and we like to be beasts when we're going stuff through. We don't stand on ceremony. It's not about looking pretty or being nice. It's about building companies fast. Okay, next one. I've been doing a fair amount of mentoring on Zoom, both for Dojo. Yeah, I know you have, and you've been fan friggin' tastic. And actually, so I'll tell you something just about Eli, and not actually about everything, about mentors in general. When I started in Santa Monica, I got here 6 years ago, and I didn't know anyone. And when I first came here, I immediately joined the Chamber of Commerce with the intention of getting on the board and going up. And I immediately surrounded myself with incredible people, not just Eli, but Len as well, and other folks in the local region, because I wanted them to be my friends, and I wanted to make sure I had a genuine relationship whereby I could also build up to a place where anything I got back from them, I could pay it forward in the future. And relationships that I've had with Eli over the years, you watch it in 4 or 5 years time as our companies start moving forward and getting better and better and better, stronger. People remember their friends. Mentoring, as long as you do it smartly, I think it's a fantastic, fantastic way to do it. What about California shut down? Yeah, best news in the world. And by the way, I'm only talking about startup, there's obviously people going through terrible turmoil and really tough personal situations. I'm not even referring to that. I'm just talking about, as somebody in the startup space, I love the fact that every target that I'm going after is in a cage. I don't care who it is. I'm going after personalities. Awesome. They're bored. They're poor. They're in a cage, and I know where they are. Agents of personalities. They suddenly have got no ego. Clients, shoot, they got to pick up the phone to me. This is great. This is the best time in the world for one of the old inventions to come back out again, the rotary phone, and start picking it up and calling people because they'll answer it. Okay, that's great to hear. Bum, bum, bum. What company is Mariah involved with? That's GeoJam, GeoJam. Pre-revenue in a startup with a great team, with just a great idea and vision. How do you determine a pre-seed company valuation of 5 to 10 million? So pre-revenue startup with a great team, but so it's pre-revenue. Is it pre-revenue and pre-product? Whoever had that question from Vincent. Len, do you mind just letting Vincent off mute so we can explain this?
Let me find him for a second. There he is.
Was that your old age I heard there?
Yes, it was. All right, Vince, you're off mute.
Hey guys, thank you, Len. Good to see you again, by the way. Yeah, this was merely a comment towards a comment you made earlier, where you had startups within your accelerator where you had evaluated their business at 5 to 10 million. And I'm simply assuming that this is pre-revenue and pre-seed. Is that basically the benchmark by which you determine the company valuations of the startups within your accelerator?
It's a really interesting question because, look, valuation, the entire investment business that we're in is based on emotion, FOMO, and greed, right? It's just based on all those things. If we know, and so generally, if you look at a company which is pre-revenue, if it's pre-product and pre-revenue, it's very hard to justify these days a valuation of more than, $2 or $3 million for your company.
Any valuation.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't even put a valuation on.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly with Len. For once you start getting traction, people can start seeing, and it really starts with how much money do you need to get to wherever you need to get to. So at the very beginning, you just do a note and say you get to the next level. But you will find that some investors will mention valuations to you. And I just always look at it and say, look, how can you conserve as much equity as you can, but at the same time not be detrimental to the speed of your startup going forward? And as you surround yourself with other people, you do get a feel as to some of the caps that they have. You get a feel as to, some of the raises they're looking for and what they need. And then once you start with, and actually, this is actually a really good segue into the I'm going to just tell you what we went through in the vision training this week. So, I mentioned to you about incremental innovation versus transformative when we talked about polio vaccine versus the iron lung. I talked to you about the CEO. But let's start with future back thinking. And future back thinking is being able to transmit that huge, big, hairy, audacious goal, like making sure that people can see how massive it is, whether it's driverless cars or whether it's the fact that, us or anybody else, right? Just, you want something so enormous that we can speak to it, and then you just track it back. Okay, so Amazon probably had the goal that where they've got to today at the beginning. I don't know Jeff Bezos, but I'm guessing that he had an idea that this was more than a bookshop for folks who wanted to buy books online, right? I'm sure he saw that as a beachhead to get to something way bigger. So you got to get to that huge, big, hairy, audacious goal. And then we have to look and see, how much is this going to be worth? And sometimes you get there on purpose, and sometimes you get there by luck. So take Robinhood. I've got a great buddy who didn't invest in Robinhood because he said, like, who in their right mind is going to play with a money app where it's fantasy sports for friggin' stock markets? Yeah, that's what it was. But the team was so brilliant that they then pivoted and then turned it into what it became today, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. So you have to have that huge vision, that huge goal of where you're going to. And then you're going to work out two things. You're going to work out, number one, how much is it going to cost me to get there? And how much time do I have to get there? Most venture capitalists want to see, actually, if we take about the best, like they want to be able to see 2 years, you're at 100 grand a month. Another 2 years, you're at $1 million grand a month, and $1 million a month. Another 2 years, you're then at 10 million a month. Like crazy, almost impossible, and very seldom done. Hardly ever, actually. But that's what they want to see that you're aiming for. If you're building a unicorn, if that's the road that you go down, and then you say, okay, I'm building to this level. I understand I'm going to need to go through 3 or 4 rounds of funding. Am I a honey, whereby I require very little money? They only went to Series A and they got to a $4 billion valuation. Or am I Uber, where I am going to be faced with litigation my whole friggin' life? We are never going to make any money, probably ever, until after all of the founders have died. But we know that based on the hype in the market, we're going to be able to build a valuation with no logic under it whatsoever to whatever, 30, 40, 50 billion dollars. But that's going to cost you an awful lot more, and you're going to need to run an awful lot quicker. So you build into the model how much you're going to raise, over what period, and how long that's going to last you, and how many users it's going to get you to the next stage. And then that will bring you back to a place where you work out what's possible. Yeah, but it's a great point. And by the way, everybody should work on this vision. Everyone should look and say, what is the biggest, craziest, most innovative thing that I can do? Because I have to get this across. And I even found it, look, it's not even folks here, but even my own startups that we just invested in. We had our first day yesterday, and everybody came on the call. And their visions were so teeny weeny, like they were so tiny. It was so, we're going to evolve storytelling within video. Okay, we're going to stop people from breaking in through cybersecurity loopholes. Oh, okay, it was just so and it was so vanilla. And it's why we do this first week. And you need to get past that. You need to, like, literally. If you think about it like this, if you could know that you were going to be a Nobel laureate like 20 years before it happened, and you could articulate in a imagine if this, and this happens, like that's how big you want your startup to be. You don't want it to be any less than that, and you don't want it to sound any less than that. You are literally going to give away 5 to 7 years of your life. And that's if you don't make it, right? And you're giving that away in a lifetime of poverty and having to say sorry to everybody because you haven't been able to do what you were supposed to do and turn up to the places that you were supposed to turn up. So if you're going to do that, make it for something monstrous, huge, massive. Okay, cool. Anyway, right. So I've already put capital in these teams. Yeah, well, we put capital into 3 of the teams when they were pre-revenue. And we did one of them was super risky because we know that if they don't raise any more money, then they won't make it. But we just felt the team was so strong that they'll use that as their own traction. Okay, it's like 7 minutes left, and I've been rabbiting on for a little while. Any other questions, or would anybody like to put their hand up and engage in a conversation on anything? Or Len, anything you want to say?
So Brian, let's talk about, and you're big on brand and vision, and
Yeah.
those are big components for you and what you demand of the people that participate in Expert Dojo. So as they get ready for that first fundraise, now outside of the accelerator, so going to angel, high net worth individuals, going to angel groups, going to micro VCs, what do you think, or what is your counsel on getting people ready for that raise? What do they need to do?
Okay, so look, I'm in a school of one for my viewpoint on this, so don't necessarily take it as a fact. I was on a panel in Orange County like a year ago, I think, and somebody asked one of the guys on the panel, one of the angel guys, and asked, what should I do to get in front of your angel group? And the person said, well, what you should do is you should speak to a lot of people in the angel group, and then you should tell them about your product, and you should let them know about it, and then you should apply, and then you should email us, and you should stalk us. And then they asked me, and I'm like, you should just not give a shit. Like, you shouldn't care. You build a great company, and be a great PR ambassador, and make sure you keep people updated with what you're doing. Like, I would much rather, if a startup sent me an email to say, hey, Brian, just to let you know, I'm going to build this company. I'm going to do this in revenue. I'm going to outreach these clients. I'm going to hire these team. And I don't give a shit if you invest or if you don't invest. But based on the trajectory that we're going for, we're probably going to hit Series A within a year and a half. I'll shoot you over an update in a month's time. Like, who do you think I'm going to go after? This is no different than, how you get involved in relationships. What do you want? You want a strong person who's going to be engaged, and they're going to be the person that you believe can be the right one for you? Or are you going to be the one who's begging for the other person to go out with you? Same with jobs, same with everything. So I personally believe, yes, have a great data room, make sure all of your information is correct. Don't be arrogant, by the way. Like, I say this in a very aggressive way. And you shouldn't be arrogant. You should be humble in the way that you say it, and you should be nice, and you should be polite to people. I'm talking more about a state of mind. I want you not to care so much. I want you to convince me and everybody else that whether we invest, we're insignificant. You're the Rolling Stones. We just happen to be the people who get backstage passes to travel with you. And when you have a toxic relationship that goes the other way, where it feels that you're lucky if an investor comes, like, screw that. You're building a great company, or you're not building a great company. So have your data room, make sure your deck is really clear, speak to a huge vision, something massive, something that's going to change the world. But don't do it because it's for an investor. Do it because it's not worth giving up 7 years of your life unless you're going to do that for. Milestone your way through. Again, don't do it for an investor. Do it because you're not an idiot. Like, you want to make sure everything should be milestoned. Like, we wouldn't go to Chicago without a GPS. So milestone what you're doing, and don't milestone it yearly. Milestone it daily. Work your way back to your days and what you're going to achieve and when you're going to achieve it, and then be the best PR person in the world without caring. And actually, Vincent came up with another good question as well. Do I expect pivots in all of the startup community? Here's how I kind of see startup. I see it the same as Expert Dojo. We didn't start Expert Dojo to be an accelerator. We started it because I was so fascinated with trying to see, was there a way to fix failure within startups? I didn't even want success in startups. I wanted to understand why 98% failure was okay. And I don't believe from going from a laboratory to going to a mentorship place, to going to an investor intro place, to going to a training academy, to going to a venture studio, to going to an accelerator, to going to an international accelerator. I don't think we made one single pivot in that whole journey. Here's what happens. We're inventing something brand new. The world has never seen it before. It came out of here, whether it's me or any of the people on this Zoom call. So how the hell can we have the arrogance to believe that we created the perfect ending straight away? It's not the way it works. What we create is probably 15, 16% of what the final masterpiece looks like. The difference between really great founders like Robin Hood and founders that struggle a little bit more is that those founders, they're continually on the search, and they recognize and they understand that a no is as important as a yes to get to from 16% to 16.5%. Tell me that our mentorship is terrible, and we're like, okay, cool. You need more than that? I got you. We need to do something better. Actually, giving me yeses all the time, especially if they're false yeses, sometimes is actually way worse on it. So no, I don't believe in pivoting. I believe in evolving, and I believe in keeping your ears and your eyes open to do it.
Thanks, Brian. Does anybody else have any questions that you'd like to ask? This would be a good time. No, not seeing any questions, Brian. So maybe we'll be off the hook right at 1 o'clock today.
Sweet. Me on time. That's crazy.
That is, oh, here we go. Oh, this is a thank you from Vincent for answering his questions.
They were great questions, Vincent.
All right. You know, I'm going to put some people on the spot because I know where they are in this. So, Mr. Arena. So Vince Arena is with a company in our Preccelerator. He has raised a little bit of money in friends and family, and is closing out another round in that, and is looking for his first kind of institutional or angel investors, high net worth investors. And you know, we're trying to raise that first $300,000, Brian. That seems to be very difficult for people who have done it before, as well as people who haven't done it before.
What's the model? Because you know, by the way, let me give you two great stories actually, just to speak to it, and it may be relevant to you. Number one, Rad Intelligence, one of our companies from 2 cohorts ago. And I swear to God, I thought these guys were brilliant from the first day they came in the door. And he did every single thing that I just told you that you should do as a founder. And not only did he say he was going to double revenue every month for 6 months, but he actually did it, right? And then he wrote to the investors exactly like I told you. Everybody, Mucker, the whole lot of them. And maybe it was because it was COVID, like, I don't know. But then he got to a stage after 6 months where he just said, F this. I brought my revenue from like 10,000 a month to 100,000 a month. He did everything. He did PPP loans. He did personal loans. Like, he went way more hardcore than we would even suggest people to go. And then he did a crowdfunding campaign. And if you look at Rad Influencer on WeFunder this week, he launched his campaign a week ago. He's already, I think he's probably on $650,000, $700,000 maybe that he's raised on the campaign. And it was because he did it really smartly. It's because he went to a club beforehand, a startup club. I think they're called Startup Club or something. And then he met with WeFunder. They introduced him to a bunch of investor clubs. He then pitched to the investor clubs. The investor says, hey, we'll support you if you go on there. Gave him a discount. 5 minutes later, he's now raising. And another company in the same vein, which is PJ over at Your Gate, he's launching a crowdfunding campaign, and he's almost at Series A. So equity-based crowdfunding is changing. And if you look at some of the raises that's happening on folks like WeFunder, I mean, we've got our homegrown Howard Marks here for Start Engine, but you got WeFunder, you got Republic, you got Seed Invest. Great crowdfunding platforms. Don't go there expecting the crowd to fund you, but it's a phenomenal model. And if you'd have asked me 12 months ago, I would not have said that. I would have said, "Ooh, cap table is difficult for later stage," and I would have done all that kind of stuff. But 12 months ago, I also wouldn't have suggested to go for a term loan. We live in different times and we got to adapt to them. But the story I want to tell you is about Woodpecker. So Woodpecker, the ones I mentioned earlier on, he had a product. We were changing the product entirely. He literally came in and we couldn't work out how the company could scale. So it was a bit of an evolution which was driven by us. And what he did was very simple. He gives documents like safe documents, convertible notes, NDAs, those types of things. And he has a questionnaire that you fill out as an attorney, which allows you to be able to do these documents in like a quarter of the time. Right? So they can do it really, really quickly, which means that the attorneys were signing up for his platform. He had like 300 attorneys on the platform.
That has a lot of people.
Oh, you might want to, yeah, good, you got it then. So he's got like 300 attorneys on the platform, but they're paying too little money. And my attorney said to me, you guys should invest in these people. And I kept looking at it and thinking, oh, but the market's too small. Like he can never get past 70 or 80 grand a month, or maybe 100 grand, but it's too small. We can't build a venture-backed company. Now, why am I worried about that? Because I know I can't get him the next round and I can't get him to Series A. So we brought him in, we sat down, we went through it, and we came up with this epiphany. What we're going to do is we're going to say the horse and cart was the way people used attorneys before. The T model was LegalZoom, because they just provide legal documents with no help. And then he's going to provide the Tesla. And the Tesla is going to be that any startup, any small company, anywhere in America can get access to attorneys for specific documents at 75% discount. How friggin' awesome is that? Suddenly we can all afford attorneys because the attorneys can do things in a third or a quarter of the time. But that's not the brilliant piece. The brilliant piece was he suddenly went from being a revenue generating startup to a startup with no revenue and worse, no model built, right? So we took him all the way back and then we pitched in front of all the VCs. This guy's a brilliant pitcher. We probably hit 130, 140 investors through the accelerator, pitched to them all. Everybody said no. And we went out for a run on the beach. And he's like, F investors. I'm like, F investors. Like, they're idiots. They're fools. Nobody can see what the potential is because this is huge. But it's also because they become risk adverse. And then as we're running through, we went, hold on a second. Don't you have 300 attorneys that were on your platform that were paying before? So we said, well, why don't we do an email to them? And he wrote to them and he said 3 things. He said, number 1, I want to thank you for being a loyal supporter of Woodpecker. And as such, we are going to add more documents onto our platform, which we want to give you for free. No extra cost on it. And I would like your feedback on what documents you would want, right? Got them engaged. Number 2, we're adding a consumer-facing part on the platform, and we would like to introduce those consumers to you at your full rate, which you will now be able to do at a substantial discount because of Woodpecker, only for the forms you have there. And even better news, because we are so grateful for you being part of our journey, we are not going to charge you for that today or tomorrow. Number 3, we are one of the fastest scaling startups and have just received an institutional investment. And we were about to go to VCs to give them the opportunity to invest in Woodpecker. And we decided, why would we do that? Why would we not reward the people who have supported us? We got 4 investments within a week and a half. Now, I jumped on some of the calls and other folks jumped on the calls, but I'm just saying.
That was from their customers.
Only customers. Like, screw investors. We don't want investors now. We can build a platform. We get 3 or 4 more investments through. We can build a platform. We can go forward. Like, we can do amazing things. And look, you'll remember, I have a lot of examples like this. We have to open our eyes right now. We got to go beyond the small, narrow confines of like who we went for a beer with last week and who came to our dinner, 4 months ago. You'll remember, Len, we talked about it last night, like the first ever company in Expert Dojo was a company called Veggie Dome. And I will love Duncan forever. And it was a dome, it was a glass dome, which is like a cookie jar, but for fresh vegetables that keeps your vegetables fresh. And we did a crowdfunding campaign. And I swear to God, it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my whole life. Like, we literally got $20 payments on this thing up to about $4,000, and I was sorry, $40,000, and it was hell. But I love Duncan and I love the product. But he went, because he was doing crowdfunding, rewards-based crowdfunding, he went through every contact, and he'd come back and he'd said, I've done all my contacts. And I'd be like, have you gone to high school yet? He said, I don't even know how to find my people in high school. And then he'd go and he'd find a book and he'd say, hey, you don't remember me because it was 60 years ago. And what did he get? He ended up getting 350 grand or 400 grand from a guy who was a dentist who was in his high school. His wife has died, didn't have any kids. He was bored. He had plenty of money. And he really believed in the principle of having fresh vegetables on your table rather than sugar. So you got to be a beast. And this is not just for you, Vincent. It's like for everybody. You just have to be a beast. Like, you have to reach out. You have to treat this as if you're a cold caller in the Philippines with a target of 100 calls a day to do. And those calls can be LinkedIn invites. Those calls can be Navigator invites. Those calls can be using hunter.io. They can be reaching out through friends. And you have to ask directly, this is what I'm building. This is what's going to happen on it. And if you absolutely need the investment, then you have to approach it from an investment perspective and ask.
All right. And with that, Vince, you're off the hook because Brian is as long-winded as you. And I want to thank you, Brian, for spending time this afternoon with our folks here at the Preccelerator. Everybody, thank you for joining today.